If we are going to look for reasons one by one, the answer is to the question, why are we fighting? May seem complicated. But in reality, there are two very simple answers. One is for the attacker, and one is for the defender. The defending side, as the name suggests, uses the right of self-defense. While the situation isn't as simple for every war. Here I will explain the attacking side. In my Land Nation video, I said that we are all victims of the system. But what are the illusions that, on an individual level, sacrifice a person to the system and convince them to die? Is it love of country, culture, religion, statism, nationalism, or fantasies of heroism? The answer is all of them. And in this video, we will dissect these illusions and say no war together. Everyone falls into the misconception that the losing side in a war is the victim. But in reality, the victim is the people. The people of both the defending and the attacking sides become victims of war. This doesn't necessarily require missiles to be launched at schools or hospitals. That is a completely different approach to genocide. What makes the people victims are actually both the social and economic conditions brought by the war and the global perception formed about the countries at war. Citizens of those countries are treated as if they all support these war policies. We mustn't forget that the politicians who do this were not elected with 100% of the vote, nor could every voter have known things would come to this point. The simplest example is that it's easy for Europe and America to say Russia is bad. But Russia has essentially condemned its own people to an open-air prison, even causing them to be treated like criminals when they step aboard. Because bondage is worse than death itself. Those people were born there and didn't choose this. Just like you. Russia is just a common example in this regard. But if we get into racism, unfortunately, there are far too many examples. The concepts of religion, state, culture, and nation have been manipulated throughout history and have become cheap rhetoric for politicians. They defined people more by the environment they were born into rather than their individual selves, and they exploited people in various ways by claiming ownership over them from birth as if they were their property. Through this, they legitimized their own violence. In this way, they sacrificed both their own people and the people of the opposing side for land and resources. This exploitation created baseless enmities among people. For example, just because I was born Turkish, what possible personal issue with any Kurdish, Armenian or Greek person? Footnote: fortunately, Turks who discriminate against Kurds with whom we have lived together for centuries and Kurds who similarly discriminate against Turks are only exceptions. But what possible personal issue could a US or European citizen have with a Russian citizen? Or a Russian citizen with a Ukrainian citizen? None of us choose where we were born. But we are subjected to such manipulation that we act as if it was our own choice. One of the parties responsible for this is the teaching of history within the education system. Every country's education system narrates events from its own perspective, making us enemies for no reason. There is no grandson in prison because his grandfather committed a crime. So, we don't need to be enemies over things that we are over and done with. Different perspectives, different ideas shouldn't pit us against each other. This is not our problem. The darkest game of the system is making it seem like it is. Occupying countries market false values so well through propaganda that you think you will die honorably if you die for your country or your religion. Take a look at medieval Europe. It's called the Dark Ages today. Because you didn't die as a hero. You died trying to kill many people. The people you shot at with that hatred were no different from you. They were placed opposite you with the same lies. The truth is that that has no honor. No matter what you do, your story ends. Furthermore, in this story, the side that always holds a weapon against a civilian is the bad side. No matter how many excuses you offer, this fact doesn't change. Wars are born from politics. One side attacks another side for resources, land or political reasons, and markets if to do with fabricated justifications using your own constructed values. The US lie about bringing democracy is the most current example of this. They invented this lie for the underground resurgence in the Middle East and South America. They planted the resurgence, sold Ukraine to Russia, and fortunately couldn't overpower Iran. Then there is the system's historical trump card. They market wars that happened perhaps hundreds of years before you so well that you become ready to sacrifice yourself. They stir you up. And even if you have never seen a dead body in your life, you want to run to the front lines and commit your first murder. Thousands like you are there with the same feeling. As a result, thousands of people die because of a fight between two governments. After this happens, ceremonies are held, your name heard. But after, you are no longer there. Who really wins? You or the system that convinced you to do this? I'm sure if we put the leaders of those warring countries in a cage and told them to sort it out among themselves, they would make peace because it concerns their own lives. But when it comes to you, they can easily sacrifice you. Take a look at the ongoing wars and the tragic scenes emerging today. Do you remember the series of events that took place in the Russia-Ukraine war? Russian citizens who were aware of what I am describing and didn't want to sacrifice themselves were extradited to Russia by Western countries and were forced to fire weapons at Ukraine against their will. Because of this foolish act, who knows how many Ukrainians and Russians lost their lives. Politicians look at the entity, not the individual, and this benefits the country they perspective as an enemy. Alter of sending military troops to the enemy is a foolish move. Unfortunately, this has happened frequently. The point I am trying to make is this: those not convinced by these dirty operations can also be forced by the systems. This usually results in either forced migration or being forced into war. Those who defend the right to life and want to peace are declared traitors and exiled, because peace doesn't suit them. My favorite music group Icepeak is a prime example of this. They were a Russian music group that spoke of peace. They didn't fall for government policies, wanted to help Ukrainian people, and along with their donations to those people, they engaged in anti-war propaganda in Russia. They themselves are still in exile today. The price of honesty is hard but extremely valuable. As a person, I separately thank and send my love to Anastasia and Nikolai. I hope they continue on their path and manage to change things. No matter the cost, I will not remain silent. Also, on the original version of this video, apart from the rabbit comments, an Ukrainian friend of ours commented. A friend who had to leave his homeland because of the war. My anti-war videos are also for him and all victims of war. Neither the first nor the last. As long as the world isn't a better place, I will be here making videos. When you look at it from the perspective of governments, each victim is just a number. A pawn sacrificed in a chess game where no checkmate is ever played. They place you in an even simpler position than I described in my wake up video. The moment you pick up a weapon, you are not a profession, a label, a gender, an age group, or a social media profile. You are one of thousands of pounds to be spent. If you happen to survive, even if you tell heroic stories to those around you about how you killed people, it doesn't change the fact that for the system that gave you that weapon, you were a pawn. Nationalism concept is the packaged, polished version of herd psychology. One of the most primitive instincts. Countries have changed over time, and their purpose today is service. if I can reach many independent countries simultaneously with this video today, and if we can talk to each other about the same ideas regardless of our location, then there are no longer boundaries as before. When talking about technology, we don't speak of the developments of specific country, but of humanity. Those before us wrote that immense history we read, and this cycle of war was created. We must understand that if we group in countries this way, this vicious cycle will never end. Saying your grandfather did this to my grandfather gets us nowhere, because neither the perpetrator nor the victim of that even exists today. Looking to the past or waiting to the future for change is an illusion. The only moment we can control is now. Now, we can put our differences aside to unite under the super identity of being human to break free from this cycle of violence. We are not property of the place we were born on the borders we invented. We are creatures of nature without borders. As someone who was caught up in and manipulated by these illusions for years, I wanted to explain this game I have displayed to you. Although it's shameful, I won't deny my past and will prevent other people from falling victim to the same manipulation. I'm Mert Tamtürk. I came to break down petrified taboos.